We now have a new game to play in the Employee Lounge. They follow random paths. They randomly use nitros. If you win, which I just did, you get 3 points. If you come second, you get 2, and if you come third, you get 1. And let me show you how the point system works, because a few people have been asking how I've done the scoreboard and the leaderboard, and I haven't used any plugins. I've just put it in with the code here.
I'm Xanderwood. I make indie games and tutorials on game development. I also play your indie games every week on my channel. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell icon so you never miss a video.
Before we get into the video, just a massive shout out to my new Patreon Selwyn and my existing Patreon James Welch for supporting this game dev journey that I'm on and becoming Patreons of mine. Thank you so much to you guys. As always, with the Patreon you can get access to all the music, all the game assets. You can get my source files from some of the games that I make. Effectively, you can get access to everything I do behind the scenes. If you want to become a Patreon, there's a link in the description. Just click the link, head on over. There's 2 levels. You can become a supporter or a content creator, depending on what you're after. You're going to get shout outs in my videos as you get access to all that good stuff that I previously mentioned. Lastly, if you haven't already signed up for Xander Jam, there's a link in the description. Click the link, head over to Itch, and you can check out the game jam that I'll be hosting next month. Hey guys, welcome back to the Devlog. We now have a new game to play in the Employee Lounge. Play Moon Racer, 1 credit. Sure, 1 up. And here's the game. Has no sound. 1 sound effect for when you play. Here's the title screen. You can see my best game time is 107 seconds. That's to complete the entire race. Let me show you how it works. You get a countdown. And then you go. Dodge the moon rocks, pick up nitros, use the nitros. The AI cars, they follow random paths. When you win the race, you get taken to the scoreboard page, which comes up and tells you your rank. If you win, which I just did, you get 3 points. If you come second, you get 2, and if you come third, you get 1. All the stats are showing on the right-hand side now in the side HUD. When I pick up nitros, they will show up in the side HUD. I've minimized all the info so it's not as cluttered, because I don't think there needs to be so much clutter on screen. I've taken away the info that shows you how many nitros the enemies have or the other races, because I don't think it's necessary. And then it updates the scores, so it adds on to the previous round. There you can see that I've dropped down into 2nd place. You can go the long way, has less obstacles, or you can go the short way, which requires a bit more skill. I'm in joint last place with Ace. Puts me on the leader table of 2nd, which calculates the scores at the end. It gives you your total race time in the top left and your best time in the top right. You can see I didn't beat my best time, so my best time doesn't get updated on the home screen. And then obviously I've got Space Attack there as well. How cool is that? I've also been tweaking a few of the sounds because I've noticed that there's a little bit of an inconsistency with some of the sound levels. So what I've done, which I think works really, really well, is I've created a separate event sheet just to handle the sound volumes. And I've made a bit of a mixing table. So if I come down here with the sound folder, you can see I've got an event sheet that just says sound levels. And what I've done is I've created a variable that's going to handle the sound levels, and this is all in decibels, and all I've done is set it up as a number, and I've just called it whatever it needs to be, and then the value represents how loud it's going to be when I play it. So you can see that I've got the text, which is the typewriter text noise, at minus 20 decibels, the level music at minus 10. So if I go to my event sheet and I come down and find the text music here, you can see where it says volume, all I've done is I put that global variable in there. And that way, if I want to update or tweak the text sounds, instead of going through the whole game and finding them one by one, I can just go to my event sheet and I can just tweak this one variable and it'll update all of them in the game, which is a massive, massive time saver. Although I'm now in the situation where I've got to go through and find all the places that I've put these sounds and update it, but it's not too tough, because if you push Control F, you can bring up a find window with construct, which is quite a nice little feature, and I can check every single event sheet in my game, and if I type in the first part of the sound, which is type text, it's going to bring up everywhere in the game that is being displayed. So I can simply just double click on one and it will take me straight to it, and then it tells me in here the volume level, so I can see that all these are set to text, which is exactly what I want, which is this variable right here. So it's not that much of a pain. I can just go through the first few in the event sheet and then just find all of them, and then I can update them to the corresponding global variable that controls the sound. And then I've got myself a little mixing table effectively in this one event sheet. Let me take you through some of the event sheets for the Moon Racer game. So I've got my main event sheet here, and I do apologize if you were following along the tutorial series for this game, but I really just didn't have the time to commit to making it. And the way I program things, if I've not done it a million times, I do a lot of things by trial and error. So I'll try a few things and then I'll play it and see if it works, and then I'll come back and I'll tweak it. And when I was doing the Moon Racer tutorial series, I was finding that before I even made the episode, I'd have to go through and just make sure that what I was doing was going to work, and then go on and do it. So I was effectively repeating myself throughout the whole process, and it was just taking up so much time. I work so much faster when the camera's not on, and I can just tweak something, test it, tweak it, test it until I'm happy with it, and then I can just move on to the next thing. So this is my title screen for Moon Racer. I've just created a tile background, and on this I just made it 10 by 10 and drew a moon. I left some gaps in it so the black would show through, and I just put a little tiny bit of shading on just so it kind of stands out and pops out a little bit from the background. I've just got my press enter to play text that goes on. I've got some cars on the left, and then the title screen has its own event sheet, which is this one. And all I've done here is I've just set the car to destroy itself when it gets to a certain position on the right hand side, and then I've set a condition here that says every 2 seconds create a new one and put it on the left, and then every tick, so every frame, just set the car's position to itself +1 on the X, and then that effectively just makes the car drive across the screen without having to code anything in. And then every 2 seconds another one pops in and out it comes. And I put the finish line here and here just so you can see that it's driving from one to the other, and then the moons go around the outside, which will be the walls and the collisions. But these aren't controllable, they just randomly spawn in and drive across the screen while you're waiting to play the game. The only other thing I've got going on here is when you press enter, go to the game, and then the sound effect. There will be some music on here like there is on Space Attack, but I haven't put that in just yet. Then when you get to the game, I've got one event sheet that controls all 4 of the levels, so all 4 of the tracks. So track 1, which is this one here, and again I've just put the moons around the outside, just again for decoration. And then I've got race 2, which is exactly the same, just slightly different layout, and then race 3, which is the same again. These blue bits, these are collision detectors, so if you drive over one of these, effectively it means you're hitting the wall, and it sets your speed. So if I go into the event sheet, where are we? Off-road events here. I've got 2 speeds for the player. I've got normal max speed and I've got slow speed. All I've told the game to do is when we're driving over this blue bit, set the speed of the car to slow speed, and then when we're not, set it to normal speed. And then when we're overlapping it, I just spawn in the particles, which looks like we're kind of grinding up against the rocks, or a bit of smoke coming out the back, or whatever the case may be. I had a real torrid time, and if you've been following me on Twitter, you may have seen some of it, but I had a real torrid time with the enemy cars, the AI cars, following the path around. It was really annoying me, and it's part of the reason why I decided to stop doing the tutorial series on it, because I would do stuff and it would work, and then I'd play test it again, and those bits that did work before didn't work, and it was just driving me nuts. But I found a system now which is pretty good. What I had before was a bunch of these pink checkpoints dotted around, so there'd be like 4 of them like here, and then I'd basically say to the car, find a path to one of these. I'd set a random number generator on the car. You can see it's here, RNG. I'd set each car to have one of those, and then when we start the game, I'd set it to choose a random number between, say, 1 and 4, and whatever that number was, it would correspond to a checkpoint. And then I would say when it hits the checkpoint, then recalculate that random number, and then go to the next one of 2 or 3 or 4, and then the next one and the next one, and then it would work for the most part. But then sometimes the cars would stop in random places, or they wouldn't reach the checkpoints, or they drive right up to it and then they'd stop just before they touched it so they wouldn't collide, and I just could not figure out for the life of me how to fix it. I even looked at the tutorial on Construct on the racing game, and I looked through the code on that, and that just made my face hurt. I realized very quickly that looking up and reading in depth on those sorts of things and how it works just isn't for me. I'm more of a kind of guy that thinks that might work in my head logically, let's try it in the game and see if it does, and then tweak it. And what I've come up with is a system which works perfectly. So when the race begins, the enemy cars, they will find a route to one of these two blue waypoints, but when they collide with pink, it recalculates their route to one of these two, and then when they collide with this one, it recalculates their route to one of those, and so on and so forth. So they're going to hit the pink barrier before they finish their routes. They're always going to be updating and changing the path that they're going to follow, and it's working really, really well. These green ones here, this is at stages where they can use their nitros, and I did think about giving them the autonomy to be able to pick and choose whenever they wanted to, but what I would find is they'd randomly use it and then crash into a wall because they'd use it here, and they wouldn't have enough time to turn, and it would just mess up with the speed, and it would put them out of the loop, or it might make them miss one of these checkpoints. So now I control when they can use it, and it's basically at the start of any straight bit of road, which would make more sense because that's kind of when you would typically use it anyway. So if I show you the events under nitros, and everything's grouped in nice and tight, so I can see everything at a quick glance. So down here in the AI section, you can see with Ace and Biff, if they've got more than one nitro, if they've got one or more nitros, and then they collide with the boost trigger, which is the green little bar, then we simply change the speed to 500 for 0.5 seconds, and then we set it back to their normal max speed of 60, and then we subtract one from the nitro, and that's all we need to do, and that makes them burst forward for half a second and then go back to their normal speed, and it works very, very well. When the race is done, we get to the end screen. I've got this little table here, and these are just sprites, and these are just text placeholders that just say player in every single one, and I've just named them differently. So this is text first, so this will always display the first place name, this is third, and this is second. So they will always stay in those places, and what I do is I just update the code to change this from saying player to whoever's name it is that has got the most points when they win. And let me show you how the point system works, because a few people have been asking how I've done the scoreboard and the leaderboard, and I haven't used any plugins. I've just put it in with the code here. Every time, let me start with so I've got the three cars here. I've got the player car, and I've got the first enemy car and the second enemy car. And on the first car here, when we collide with the starting grid, we spawn in 3 more nitros. That happens every time we pass the start line. If the lap is 0, and again I've set a variable on the actual, if I click on it, I've set a variable on the actual start grid itself. So on this object, I've given it an instance variable called lap. So this is like a counter. Every time something passes it, it can then update that lap. So if we look on here, when the player car drives over it, if the lap is 0, which it is when we begin the race, we set it to lap 1. When we get to lap 1, we set it to lap 2. When we cross it again, we set it to lap 3. And then if we cross it in this lap 3, we set the game to false, which is just a boolean that I've put in to determine whether we're racing or not. Deactivate the controls. Underneath here, nested in under lap 3. So if it is lap 3, what I want the system to do is have a look and see what position the player is in. And I've got these 3 variables here called position 0, 1 and 2, and this is a global variable, so this is available for everybody. So what I've done is on here, let's just look at the player first. If the position is 0, which it is when we start the game, and that effectively means that nobody's crossed the finish line yet. So if the position is 0 and we cross the finish line, where am I? Here. Then I set position to 1, so it can't be 0 anymore, and I give the player 3 points. If the AI car then crosses it, it's not going to be 0 because the player's already got there first and set it to 1. So when the AI crosses it in its position 1, I give 2 points to this character and then set the position to 2. Then when the third car crosses the line, it's not going to be 0, it's not going to be 1, because the player and the second car have already triggered those and set it to 2. So when this person crosses the finish line, it's automatically going to be 2, and therefore he gets 3 points. And then I've just set a global variable for each of them to track their score. So you can see player score, Ace score, Biff score, and that's 0, 0, 0, and they will update based on who crosses the finish line first. And it's the same for everybody. If player 1 crosses it and it's already at position 1, that means one of the other cars have got there first and he only gets 2 points. Well, that's ace, but the same thing, you get the idea. And then the same thing for 3, gets 1 point. And that's how I've done the scores. And then that tallies up through all 4 races. And then all I do on the end screen here is whoever's got the most points, this text box displays their name, same for second, same for third, and it's as simple as that. The only thing that's a little bit more tricky than that is in the race, and that is this score table. And I've got this on a layer called fader. All I do is set the layer invisible when the race starts, and then when the race ends I set the fader layer visible, and then this comes on. And this is just a basic sprite background with the 3 levels, basic text at the top and the bottom, and then these texts, these are what I move around based on who's got the highest score. And all I've done with that is just set the Y. I've just set a condition that checks the score and then sets these texts to a Y position, which is up and down based on who's got the highest score. So like with the leaderboard, if player 1's got the highest score on the end screen, I set the text here to player 1. Exactly the same thing on the game. If player 1 has the highest score at the time, I set this text Y position to be 36, which is up here, and then that just bumps up at the end of the race. And that all happens before the layer becomes visible, so that you never notice. It just pops it to the top. And all I've done is set the points, and again, these have a unique name each: Biff score, Ace score, player score, and all I've done is set the player score to be aligned with the player text at all times. So every tick I've set the position of this to equal the position of this in terms of the Y. So when player moves up, the player score automatically moves up with it, and then that just shuffles it around up and down. It's all based off these scores here. And all I've done is set Y positions and text to display certain things. So it's really quite simple. I think I've simplified it quite well, and it works perfectly in game, just shuffles everything around based on who's winning, which is exactly what I want. Then I've added the save feature. So I've put saving and loading on its own event sheet, which is just here in the hierarchy of the Moonracer folder. And all it is on starter layout is I check to see if best time exists. And all I've done is set a variable. If I go back to my game events, all I've done is set a variable for best time. I set it to 9999 to start with because I want to check to see if the current time is less than the best time. And if I set the best time to 0, it's never ever going to be less and it will never update. So I need my best time to be really high. So I've just set it to 9999 when you start, and then the first time you win, providing you don't take more than 10,000 seconds, which you shouldn't do, then it will update as the best score. So all I've done on saving is check to see if that exists, and at the end of the game I put in if total time is less than or equal to best time, then set the best time to total time. Hope that wasn't too confusing. That's only on the condition that the race is over. And then local storage, then I just set this key, and this is just anything. I can call this anything I want. This is just something I can reference. I've called it the same just for ease. I've said set best time to best time, so I can reference that first best time later. So when I start the layer, I check to see if that best time exists, which it will if we played before, and then I get it. And then once I've got it, I set our global variable best time to the local storage value that we have, and then all I've got on the title screen is I've got this text here which is called best time, and every tick I set that to equal best time and SEC, which is seconds obviously. I hope that wasn't too complicated. If you want me to do a tutorial on a racing game, then I can do. Now that I've gone through and built Moonracer from start to finish, I feel much more equipped to be able to deliver a really good little top-down racer if that's something that would interest people. So if it is, then do me a favor and leave a comment below and let me know that would be something that you would watch and would be interested in, and I absolutely will do it. But that's what I'm going to go through today. The main part of last week was simply just getting Moonracer finished, up and running. I'm going to add sounds on it before next week and add its own music in there as well. And once I've done that, I will be adding the sprites. So from the last devlog, we went through all the suggestions of sprites that could be added to the second layout. So I will be designing those. I might even, next week's probably going to be a bit of a pixel art devlog. I'll be going through all the artwork that I designed for level 2. Once all that's in place, I'll be creating enemies, and then I'll be making the interactions between the player, the cowboy, the enemies, the shooting. Obviously that's all in place at the moment anyway. So that's about it for this week. Thanks for watching the video, and as always, if you found the video entertaining, useful in any way, or if you enjoyed the series, then please do me a favor and give the video a thumbs up. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't already subscribed and you want to see more content, more tutorials, and watch me play more of your indie games, then hit the subscribe button for more content just like this. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.